on stories of transformation, we continue the I'm an Activist mini-series. As part of NRCDV Radio's Teen Dating Violence Awareness and Prevention Month activities, each week in February, you'll hear directly from young people working to end gender-based violence as they share their personal stories. I'm guest host Brecken Erdman, and on this episode of I'm an Activist, we bring you the story of several young activists who came together to work on a project highlighting their experiences as survivors. Ella Fairon, Daisy Coleman, and Charlie Coleman have bravely spoken out about their sexual assaults, the sharing of the assaults over social media, the community backlash they received, their school's handling of their ongoing harassment, and how they are now fighting for change. As the co-founders of SafeBae, Ella, Daisy, and Charlie, along with Executive Director Shael Norris, are building a movement for young people, by young people. Their story reveals how their efforts to engage students in social change work has shifted the culture and accelerated the movement to end gender-based violence. First, we'll hear from Ella as she discusses how these activists came together and how she found the strength to tell her story. Here's Ella.
We all first met during the filming of Audrey and Daisy, a film that chronicles the stories of Daisy and the now-deceased Audrey Paugh after they were sexually assaulted at the age of 14. We came together to share each of our stories of sexual assault and its aftermath in high school because we had all individually and collectively begun to feel like if no one was going to talk about it, we were going to talk about it. I didn't share what had happened to me for some time after, and I know firsthand how keeping that silence can be so toxic to healing. I knew that only once I was able to break my silence and seek the help and support of my family, multiple doctors, and fellow survivors was I truly able to begin healing.
Next, Daisy discusses how the filming of the movie Audrey and Daisy sparked her activism and led to her healing process.
Allowing the filmmakers to tell my story was something I knew I had to do for Audrey and all the other victims who didn't survive to tell theirs. Sharing my story alongside Audrey's and the others in the film has allowed untold numbers of young survivors to come forward, seek help, and demand their rights. So much healing comes from meeting other survivors, not feeling alone, and doing the work to change our culture. As the film was in the editing stages, we developed the idea that we could start our own organization to be able to utilize the release of the film to support other young survivors and engage young students in becoming activists to change their school and community cultures around sexual assault and victim blaming. We wanted a way to prevent what happens to us from happening to anyone else, but it hasn't been the easiest path.
Thank you, Daisy. Now Charlie discusses the challenges and successes of introducing the program within schools.
Despite funding and support volunteer help from veterans of the anti-violence community, we still face a rather large resistance from the schools. And I think that's partly because they're just not ready to have these kinds of conversations. In many, many cases, we see principals and school boards that they don't know how to implement or where to start with the Title IX rights in their schools. Alongside that, there becomes a little bit of a fear that bringing these kinds of issues with students will send parents and the community into a little bit of a revolt. But for every one educator that has shielded themselves away from us, we've met dozens or more survivors and allies that are absolutely dying to do this kind of work in the real world. We've met with coaches, supervisors, pastors, siblings, parents, and possibly hundreds of community direct service providers that just can't wait to get this movement involved in their school. And the time is now, and people need to quit shying away from it. We need to stay awake and see the things that are really happening in this world and how we can benefit.
As the executive director of SafeBae, Shael Norris provides a snapshot of the organization's process to reach their audience and why change starts with youth. Here's Shael.
We've been making short films and social media content, posters and flyers, and everything we can possibly offer to our teams for free so that there will be no barriers at all to their being able to get started. We've been crisscrossing the country with a couple of jumps to Canada, presenting in any school that will let us in. There are days when we're exhausted, elated, triggered, empowered, and floored by the people we meet and their matching commitment to joining our work and truly being a part of lasting change that needs to start with prevention. As the world is swirling around us, shouting "Me Too," and entire institutions are being taken down in the wake, we are shouting from the rooftops that the only way to truly create irreversible, lasting change in our culture is to start with our youth. Just the simple messages of calling out rape culture and arming them with the information to understand what harassment is, what consent is, and how to intervene in an escalating situation will make all the difference in who the children of today become tomorrow.
Thank you to all of our storytellers today. SafeBae is a student-focused, survivor-driven organization whose mission is to raise awareness about sexual assault in middle and high schools, as well as students' rights under Title IX. You can learn more about their work at safebae.org and on Twitter at safe_BAE. Thank you so much for listening to our show this week, and thank you to our storytellers for their perseverance and dedication. Tune into the next episode of I'm an Activist as we bring you a story on spreading truth and building movements. Follow us on Twitter at National DVAM and hashtag I'm an Activist for all of our teenDVmonth activities. To hear more NRCDV podcasts and to access additional resources on gender-based violence and related topics, visit NRCDV.org. Stories of Transformation is an NRCDV radio podcast production brought to you by the National Resource Center on Domestic Violence. Support is provided by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Administration for Children and Families, Family and Youth Services Bureau.